Smeagol's life changed forever on his birthday. Fishing with his cousin Deagle in the Gladden fields, a glint beneath the water caught Deagle's eye. He pulled from the depths a plain gold ring. But, of course, this was no ordinary trinket. It was the One Ring, lost centuries earlier when Isildur fell. And in that moment, the corruption began. Smeagol's desire overwhelmed him. He demanded the gift for himself. "Because it's my birthday, my love." When Deagle refused, Smeagol strangled him to death, another death claimed in the ring's long history of corruption. Banished by his people for this crime, Smeagol retreated into darkness. The ring stretched his life unnaturally, twisting his body and mind. His voice split in two, wearing between the pitiful remnant of Smeagol and the snarling new self that called the ring my precious. Over time, one name remained: Gollum. A hiss spat from his own throat. That turning point of Smeagol's life wasn't how he had always lived. He was a hobbit of Riverland, one of the Store kind, who lived on the banks of the Anduin in those later Third Age years. His family was reputable, nothing unusual, so it was not although he was a hobbit ready to be corrupted. But that is what the One Ring can do. And so, after his banishment, Smeagol, now Gollum, wandered until he found his way into the roots of the Misty Mountains. There, he crept into the black tunnels beneath Caradhras and vanished from sight of sun and moon. For centuries, he lived alone, gnawing on fish from underground streams, catching goblins when he dared, whispering always to his precious. Tolkien writes that the ring devoured him, body and soul. His skin turned pale, his eyes grew large and luminous, able to pierce the dark. He forgot the feel of grass, the warmth of daylight, even the sound of his own name. He hated the dark, and he hated light more. He hated everything, and the ring most of all. Yet this isolation kept him alive. In the deep places of the world, time became meaningless. While kings rose and fell and empires turned to dust, Gollum remained, unchanged, undying, preserved by the ring's cruel mercy. But fate had plans for him still, for in those same tunnels, many long years later, another small figure would stumble in, one who would forever change Gollum's story. It was chance, or perhaps providence, that brought Bilbo Baggins stumbling into the blackness of Gollum's world. Lost from the company, the hobbit found himself face to face with a creature twisted beyond recognition, yet once kin to his own people. In that dripping cavern, a strange contest unfolded, the game of Riddles. Bilbo's small voice echoed against the stone, met by Gollum's hissing replies. The stakes were life and death, for if Bilbo lost, Gollum would eat him. If Bilbo won, Gollum would show him the way out. Tolkien writes, "A pale thin face, a pair of large pale eyes. He was looking at Bilbo with his mouth open, a hissing and gurgling coming from his throat. It was here that Gollum revealed both his cunning and his corruption. His riddles dripped with darkness, fish, teeth, time, and the endless void. But when Bilbo's pocket riddle, 'What have I got in my pocket?' cornered Gollum, the game turned. He rushed to fetch his precious, only to discover it was gone. In a frenzy, his pale eyes lit with fury. For the first time, he called it what it truly was: his life, his soul, his very being. Unseen in that moment, Bilbo stood with Sting in his hand. He could have slain Gollum, right here, right now, but instead, pity stayed his hand, and that single choice of mercy would shape the fate of all Middle-earth. Bilbo escaped into the tunnels of the goblins, the ring tight in his pocket, its strange weight already working upon him. But behind him, Gollum howled in anguish. He had lost more than just a trinket. He had lost his identity, his very reason for being. Tolkien describes it with chilling precision. He was altogether wretched. He wept and cursed and hissed until he was exhausted. Then he lay for a while, silent. When Bilbo vanished from his cavern, Gollum lingered in those misty mountains for a short time, torn between fury and despair. The precious was gone, it was stolen, and yet the thought of leaving his dark refuge terrified him. But addiction is stronger than fear. So he slunk out into the wild again. He followed Bilbo's trail, but it had grown cold. Through Mirkwood he crept, gnawing on eggs, fledglings, even crawling into the homes of the woodmen. They whispered of a blood-drinking ghost that haunted their cradles at night. Birds and beasts fled from his scent. Still he pressed on, through Dale to Laketown and back westward. His muttering cries of "Thief! Baggins! We hates it forever!" carried through the trees. At last, the trail led him south, toward the land where his precious had been forged. For in Mordor's shadows, his doom awaited. Sauron's servants found him first, drawn by whispers of his obsession. They dragged Gollum into the pits of Barad-dûr, and there he was tormented and broken, his twisted frame writhing under the Dark Lord's gaze. Yet, the ring's pull was stronger than any pain. He resisted for long, but in the end his mind cracked, and 2 words spilled from his lips. Words that doomed the Shire itself. With that betrayal, Sauron's eye turned northward, and though Gollum was at last released, he was no longer the secret keeper he had once been. He was now the unwilling herald of Middle-earth's greatest peril. Gollum would now be released. Some may claim escaped, but likely he was let out on purpose so the Dark Lord could follow his movements. But not long after, Aragorn himself captured the pitiful creature near the Dead Marshes. The ranger bound him, leading him through long miles of danger until he placed him in Gandalf's care. Gandalf's interrogation wrung from Gollum the truth of Deagol, the birthday murder, the centuries in the dark. But even the wizard could not force from him all he knew, for terror of Mordor clamped his tongue. At last, Gandalf left him in the hands of Thranduil's elves in Mirkwood. There he was watched, but never tamed. For Gollum was cunning, and when a horde of orcs struck in sudden assault, he seized the chance. Slipping through the chaos, he fled once more, free and hunting again. This is thought again to have been a plan on Sauron's side, not a happy chance for Gollum. But by now, the ring had passed to Frodo Baggins, and fate drew Gollum like a moth to a flame. He pursued the Fellowship once they formed into the mines of Moria, padding silently in the dark. He clung to the walls above Khazad-dûm, following them unseen through fire and shadow. When Gandalf fell, Gollum did not relent. He drifted down the Anduin after them, clinging to logs, his pale eyes fixed on Frodo. And when Frodo and Sam at last struck east alone, Gollum followed again. His chance was coming close. So, with the Fellowship broken apart, the ring's path leading east, with the shadowed thin figure following Frodo and Sam, at last, the 2 hobbits sprung their trap and caught the creature Gollum. Frodo might have killed him then, and perhaps spared himself so much grief. But he saw something that others could not, a reflection of his own future if he continued to bear the ring. Gandalf had once warned him, the pity of Bilbo may roll the fate of many. Frodo chose mercy too, binding Gollum to an oath in the name of the precious. From that moment, Gollum became their guide. Through the Dead Marshes, past the Black Gate, even into Ithilien, he proved invaluable. His knowledge of the wild places, the secret paths, the ways of Mordor was truly unmatched. Yet every step was a battle between Smeagol and Gollum, the broken hobbit who longed to be free, and the slave of the ring who yearned only for its return. For a time, Smeagol did seem to win. He smiled, fawned, and even spoke of kindness. But the weight of Frodo's command and Sam's suspicion gnawed at him. In the end, the darker self reasserted control. His guidance was no gift of loyalty, but a carefully laid snare leading the hobbits into the lair of Shelob. It was betrayal born not only of greed, but of survival. Gollum had convinced himself that only by reclaiming the ring could he be whole again, and if that meant feeding Frodo to a spider in the dark, then so be it. And his plan almost worked. All he had to do was wait for Shelob to devour Frodo, and he could take the ring from the remains. But Samwise Gamgee had something else to say about this. So with Gollum now split up from the hobbits, he had to stalk them once again. And so at last, all the winding paths converged on the dark heart of Mordor. Frodo, gaunt and trembling under the ring's burden, staggered toward the fires of Mount Doom. Sam, loyal to the end, bore him onward, and behind them, always, crept Gollum. Tolkien describes him in that final moment not as a monster, but as a wretched, desperate creature, crouched upon the ground like a spider. He sprang at Frodo with a strength born of madness and need. The struggle was brief but terrible. Teeth sank into flesh, and with a cry of triumph, Gollum had bitten the ring from Frodo's hand. For a heartbeat, he was whole again. Dancing upon the brink, clutching his precious, Gollum was radiant with terrible joy. Here, at last, was his victory. Yet in that same moment, it was his ruin. Blind with exultation, he toppled, and both he and the ring was swallowed by fire. Was this an accident? Did he trip over a rock? Or did Eru Ilúvatar decide to intervene? We may never truly know. But thus, the long tale of the ring ended not with the triumph of Frodo's will, but with Gollum's fall. As Tolkien wrote, even Gollum may have something yet to do, and in the end, it was his lust, his persistence, his very brokenness that accomplished what the wise could not. The greatest evil in Middle-earth was destroyed by its most pitiful servant, a creature both victim and villain, whose end was written by pity and chance as much as by fate. And so, there we have it. Gollum's story is the darkest reminder that in Tolkien's world, even the smallest life can shape the fate of all. He was not great like Gandalf, nor noble like Aragorn, nor pure like Frodo. He was twisted, broken, and despised. Yet, without him, the ring would never have been destroyed. His tragedy was that he could never escape the ring's hold, but his legacy is that Middle-earth was freed because of him. As Gandalf once said, "My heart tells me that he has some part yet to play, for good or ill, before the end." And so, the tale of Gollum closes in both ruin and triumph, the most unlikely saviour of Middle-earth. But now it is your turn. Do you see Gollum as a victim of the ring's corruption, or as the architect of his own downfall? Share your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. If you would like to support the channel in other ways, please consider our Patreon. It would really help us out in that up and down world of YouTube. But with that, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.